Hello, my name's Tony and welcome back to Fragdicted. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about another one of the new fragrances being released on the Pocketscents website any day, and this is called Cherry Tobacco. Stay right where you are. So thanks for joining me again for the second review in this series of 4 reviews of the new fragrances that Matt from Pocketscents has just released or releasing any moment. And this, like I said, is called Cherry Tobacco. This is going to be slotting in straight into the Any Ultra Plus range, and that is the bottle. It's the same shape and size as the other bottles. They're 50 ml. It's an extrait de parfum, and there's the colour of the juice. So let's get into the review. Now, no notes listed on this one, but obviously cherry and tobacco play a major part. Other notes that I would say are very likely to be there are patchouli and vetiver, and I would say possibly some notes of incense or frankincense and possibly some sweet spice. This opens up with a really realistic cherry note. It's not your typical cherry juice or cherry flavoured smells that you find. It's quite natural. The best way I can describe it is that you're stood in an orchard of heavily blossomed cherry trees. So the blossom is in full bloom and you get that cherry smell from the blossom and it's filling your nostrils, but it's not a sort of juicy smell, but it is very realistic. So more like a cherry blossom than a cherry accord, if that makes sense. So not your typical cherry almond, like a Bakewell type cherry smell, more like a cherry blossom. I hope that makes sense. It's very strong, but it's also light and airy at the same time. The cherry does subside fairly quickly, but then the tobacco note really shines through. It's a smoky, leafy tobacco smell. It's not something that's been smoked or a dirty tobacco or a stout tobacco or a cigar type tobacco. It's more of a tobacco leaf. So again, not thick and resinous, but more, again, quite airy and very natural smelling. With that tobacco, you also get a slight smoky smell. And the smoky isn't like you're smoking a cigarette. It's more of an incense or a frankincense are called. Once the tobacco note, which is the most prominent note throughout, subsides just a bit and settles back, once it softens, you start to get an earthy, almost boozy note start to come through. And then you start getting this softness and this calmness start to sort of rise out of the composition, and it settles right back into the skin. Then you can really start picking out some of those notes. At this stage, it starts to go slightly earthy, slightly boozy. This is where I'm getting the patchouli from. It is that sort of earthy, damp patchouli smell. And it's not heavy and it doesn't take over the composition. So if that type of patchouli isn't your thing, please don't worry. Tobacco is still dominating. And then it goes into another transition. So once that settles back a bit, you start to get a ever so slight greenness appear, but it's not like a grass greenness. It's very, very faint. I would say that's vetiver. It's sort of a slightly dampy feel to it. It reminds me a bit, and Matt pointed this out to me and I have to agree, it reminds me a bit of what the vetiver's like in Terre de Hem. So it's an almost sort of citrusy vetiver, if that makes sense. Still, again, very, very light and airy. So if Terre de Hems became a tobacco fragrance with cherry added, this would be it. This fragrance, I think, is quite misleading, this cherry tobacco name. It's got cherry, obviously. It's got tobacco, obviously. But why I think it's misleading is because I was expecting it to be something like Naxos or Pure Havana. But I'm actually really pleased it's not, because that to me has been done. It's already been done. This hasn't. It's unlike any other cherry or tobacco fragrance I've ever smelled. So it hasn't got that sort of cherry tobacco, honey tobacco feel to it that you get with those more resinous fragrances. It's not a really thick and resinous fragrance at all. It's actually a really light and airy composition. It doesn't smell of those sort of added really sort of deep and dark fixatives that and aroma chemicals you get in some of those fragrances. It's not that at all. It's actually very natural and very light and airy. It's not too heavy or too sweet. The tobacco isn't too strong or too overpowering. It has this sort of gentle and classy, it's just very, very unique. Now, another fragrance that I think that you could compare this to a little bit, and that is because of the tobacco note being quite sort of a tobacco leaf in there, and that is Aramis's Tobacco Reserve. This has that similar tobacco note in with that sort of light and airy nature rather than it being a thick and resinous fragrance. So it's not the same. If you put them side by side, they're nothing alike really at all, but it's in that same ilk or same vein of fragrance rather than it being a Naxos style. Let me talk about performance. This isn't going to be your sort of beast mode tobacco fragrance that's going to last for hours and hours and hours, and it's going to project and it's going to be making a statement. This is something that will sit closer to the skin, but I love the way it transitions as you go through the wearing and the softness of it. It's not lacking performance by any means. I think Matt's gone for a more sort of natural smell over something that could have been beast mode. I don't think he wanted that type of fragrance with this, and that's what makes it unique. But like I said, I get quite a few hours from it still as a wear-in. Maybe sort of, I don't know, let's hazard a guess at around the 6 hour mark. It projects quite strongly to start with and does fill a small area. Once that cherry note disappears and tobacco softens a bit, it does then start to sit quite close to the skin, but it is such a comforting, lovely, unique wear. I would say it leans on the slightly masculine scale of masculine feminine, but I think there are a lot of ladies that would love this as well. It's definitely something I'm really going to enjoy in my collection. A really great addition to the lineup that Matt's got, and another original inspiration. It's not copying anything. It is very unique, like I've said loads of times so far in this video, so sorry to repeat myself. Again, happy new year to everybody. Thank you for watching the video. I will be reviewing Fragdicted next, so stay tuned for that one. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And one last thing, don't forget to keep smelling wonderful.